Hey, Susan.
Hey, Christina.
You want to talk about measures of position?
I do, and I think we need to look at medians
Okay.
because a median is a measure of position. If we lined all the data up, say smallest value to largest, the median would split it in half so that 50% would be above that median and 50% of the data numbers would be below that median.
Yeah, so another way I can think about that is calling it the 50th percentile.
Which says 50% is below. We always, when we talk about percentile, we're talking about the percent that's below that value.
Right.
Yes.
And so what we're going to look at here with the 5-number summary are actually quartiles and not percentiles. So a quartile divides our data into kind of 4 equal parts.
Quarters,
exactly. And so Q1, the first quartile, is the same thing as the 25th percentile.
Yes. And can we write that as P with a little 25 beside it? Because sometimes it's written that way.
Yeah,
and that means 25% of the data values would be below that number. Okay.
Yep. And the median would be the 50th percentile. And then what do you think Q3 means?
I think that's probably the 75th percentile.
Yeah.
And that would put 75% below.
Yeah. So P75.
Yes.
Yeah. And so the Q1, the median, the Q3, along with the minimum, which is your smallest value, and the maximum, which is your largest value, make what we call this 5-number summary.
Yeah.
And so we're going to use technology to find these values, but we'll talk more about that in lecture. Right now, we are just going to use this output to say, what the 5-number summary is.
So basically, we put all of these values that are listed in this data set, we put them all into a technological platform, and it gave us this output of what these numbers were.
Yeah, and we can use that to make a graph. And we can actually use technology to make the graph too, but we want you to understand what the graph is showing in a box plot.
Yeah.
Because you might be asked the other way around, right? You might need to look at the box plot and figure out what your 5-number summary is from the box plot. So a box plot is... It's the more sophisticated term for box and whisker plot. Because I think box and whisker plot is fine. Because you do have whiskers.
Yes.
But when we draw that box plot, you can see here I've put a number line.
I'm not even going to tell you how many times she had to draw that number line to get it as evenly spaced as she has.
It's still not that great. But the end of our first whisker is going to be the minimum. So 32. Yes. So I'm just going to draw lines for now here. So 32, which is our minimum. And then 62.5, so about right here, is our Q1.
And I write the value up there too.
Okay.
So,
yeah, I can do that.
So I can kind of keep up with what I've done.
So minimum 32. And then the median, 69.5. So that's pretty close to 70. And Q3 is 79.5. And the maximum at 93. So I'll go a little above 90 here.
Okay.
And then the middle of the data has a box around it. So there's a box that goes from Q1 to Q3 with the median showing as a line in the middle. And then the whisker part goes from the minimum to Q1 and from Q3 to the maximum.
Are we going to talk about outliers at all or not?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, we can. Let me see here. We don't really have to talk about the calculation for it right now, but I'll just say that you might see a box plot that looks...
and I asked that because that whisker is pretty long on the left, and so I just wondered if...
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure if we do the calculations, that 30 that 32 is the only outlier.
Okay.
And so you might see a box plot that looks like this. So I'm going to 49, which is the lowest value that's not an outlier. And then I would show that 32
Okay.
with a little dot there.
Right.
Right. And so then you can see my box plot looks a little more, it looks a little less skewed that way.
Yeah. And we'll teach you how to calculate how to get that 49. We'll teach you that in lecture.
But notice when I do have that long whisker, that's also showing me the distribution, right?
Yes.
So because I do have that low outlier, this is showing a distribution that is skewed left.
Yep.
Right? So I can use a box plot similar to a histogram to show the distribution of the data or the shape.
Yes. That there's some low values that are pulling it way down.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. So
Can we talk about the 25%? Can we mark each 25% section so that we've got it?
Yeah, let me use a highlighter here.
Ooh, fancy.
Fancy. And slow. Okay.
Fancy and slow.
So 25% of my data would be here, right, between the minimum and Q1.
Let's change colors.
Okay. And then 25% of my data is here. So you can see my data is kind of more closely packed toward the middle, right?
Yes.
And then 25% is here between the median and Q3, and 25% is between Q3 and the max.
Okay.
So 25% of my data falls here. 25
between 32 and 62.5. And then 25% between 62.5 and 69.5.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And so Q1 marks off that first quartile. The median marks the 50th percentile or the second quartile. Q3 marks the 75th percentile, and then all the way up to the maximum there.
That's it.